1 second. Hold on. I gotta go here too. Oh yeah, I gotta start this all over again. Okay, Shalom Aleichem, everybody, and welcome. We're going to learn the last one of the Shiurim on Hilchos Dogim. I actually think that this year will be more of an Agadata, things that are interesting about fish that you might not know. And the Rebbe always wanted us to live with the times of Mashiach. This has something to do with Mashiach. Let's start from ground zero. Ground zero is, let's look on the Chumash. Most of what we're going to learn today is you're going to have on the whiteboard, you're going to have the pasuk. So over here, give me 1 second. You have the pasuk says like this in Chumash Bereshis, when it speaks about Hashem creating the world, what He created in each day of creation. So when it comes to the 5th day of the creation, it says, "Vayomer Elokim," and God said, "Yishritzu hamayim," let the waters bring forth nefesh chaya, swarms of living creatures, va'oif ya'oifef ala aretz, and birds that fly above the earth, al pnei rakia shamayim, across the expanse of the sky. Yeah. So here we have that on the 5th day, on Thursday, is when what was created? The swarms of living creatures. Now, what is the living creatures? So Rashi says that anything that crawls on the ground, anything that's not above the ground, is considered a sheretz. And he used an example: zvuvim, bugs, ants, worms. All these things were created on Thursday. All these things were created on Thursday. And then the pasuk goes on. Vayivra Elokim es hataninim hagdolim. And Hashem created the great sea monsters. Like how they translate the word? Hashem created the great sea monsters. What are these sea monsters that we are talking about? Which sea monsters? So I'll soon tell you what it is. And all the living creatures of every kind that creeps, which the waters brought forth in swarms, and all winged birds of every kind. These were all created on Thursday. So the creation of Thursday was the shratzim, the things that crawl on the ground, birds, and taninim agdolim, which are the big fish, the big monsters. The Torah calls them taninim hagdolim. The Rashi says, what are these big monsters? The Rashi says, Gdogim gedolim shebayam, these massive big fish that are in the water. Says Rashi, ubedivrei agada, when you learn in the Gemara tells us this, hu Livyatan uben zugoi. Hashem created on Thursday, the Thursday of creation, He created this mighty big fish called Livyatan, and Ben Zugoi and his mate. Shebraim Zachar and Nekeva. Hashem created these two monster fish, male and female. But we're going to learn the Gemara soon, and the Gemara is going to say, when Hashem says to Himself, if these two are going to live together and they're going to mate, then if they have any offspring, you could say bye-bye to the world. So Hashem says, He kills the female, and He's preserving it. He salts it to preserve the fish of the female fish for la'asad lavi, for the future. Because im yifru v'yirbu, because if they would multiply, The world will not be able to survive if these massive whales, let's call them whales for. Now, I want to tell you, there is going to be a mistake. And we're soon going to learn, obviously, the fact that we're going to be eating this la'asa glava seems to be that they're kosher fish. They're kosher fish. And the Gemara is soon going to quote that the Livyatan is kosher because it has the simanim that we learned over the past couple of weeks. It has the snapper and the kaskesses. That's the biggest proof that it's not these killer whales that people talk about. Because the killer whales don't have scales. They may have fins, but scales they don't have. But today's days, anytime you see a massive killer whale, they call it the Livyatan, which is not the Livyatan of the Torah. So over here we know that these massive fish, all fish, and not only, but even the massive ones were created on Thursday of creation. And God blessed them, saying, be fertile and increase, fill the waters, so the fish should multiply in the water, and the seas, and the birds will increase on the earth. So there's a bracha of pru'ervu. It says that the Eibishter gave them a blessing. So Rashi says, why do they need a special blessing? He says because fish, people hunt them. The fishermen capture them so many, so they lose a lot. People they're taken out to eat many, so they need a special bracha. And Rashi continues to say, really, animals also need a bracha, but because he didn't want to give a bracha to the nachash, to the snake, because the snake was going to be a troublemaker, so therefore he didn't give a bracha to the animals, but he gives the bracha to the fish and to the crawling things. All right. Step one.
Rabbi, just one question on the word dag in Genesis, right? In Bereshit. It applies also to whales.
The dog is a fish, right?
Right. So no, but whale in modern terminology is not a fish; it's a mammal. But in the Torah, anything that lives in the water is categorized as a fish, right? In the Torah, anything that, from the Torah point of view, anything that lives in the sea.
There could be crawling things. The Torah says,
but it's still a dag.
Okay. So let's move on to the next piece here. So let's move on to the next Gemara I have here. The next Gemara I have here is a Gemara in Chulin. The Gemara in Chulin. I'm posting it up here. The Gemara in Chulin. What happened to, I saw Yaakov Chaim a minute ago. The Gemara in Chulin in page 67b. Says the Gemara, Tanya, Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus, Omer. Rabbi Yossi, the son of Damascus, says, Livyatan, this massive fish that we're going to have a sushi party with raw fish, la'asad lavai, it's a kosher fish. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, Gaiva afike meganim, tachtov chadudei cheresh. So the pasuk says, his armor is his pride. It's referring to the Livyatan. And the sharpest post sheds are under him. So this is about the Livyatan. So the Gemara darshins, afike meganim elu kaskasim shaboy. His armor are his scales, which protect them. So this, because the pasuk says that this fish that we're going to have, has this, so this Livyatan must be a kosher fish. Now this fish, obviously when Hashem created the fish, just like when he created the animals and all other species, he created kosher and non-kosher. Amongst the fish, he created all the kosher and all the non-kosher. But this particular Taninim Agdolim that we spoke about, this Taninim Agdolim, this big Livyatan, is kosher. Good. Now let's move on to the Gemara about this discussion. I'll bring this Gemara up. A Gemara in Baba Basra. The Gemara in Baba Basra. Let me put up Baba Basra here. Baba Basra says the Gemara like this. Yaakov Chaim, you here? You with me? Said Amar Rav Yehuda. This is Baba Basra, 74b. Ayin Dalud Beis. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda Amar Rav says, Kol ma shebara Kadosh Baruch Hu b'Elamai, whatever Hashem created in His world, Zochar u'Nekeva Bram. Hashem created it male and female. Af Livyatan. Now pay attention to this, how He describes the Livyatan. This might, we just called them before the the water monsters. What do you call them? The water monsters. Af Livyatan. Nachash bariach Livyatan nachash akalasan. This is a Gemara. So too, the Livyatan, you see in English the slant serpent, and the Livyatan the tortuous serpent. Now a serpent ain't no fish, Gershon. A serpent is more in the snake family. Over here, the Gemara says that it's from this, and it's a very, very big difference if it's from the fish family or the snake family, because we don't know any snake that's kosher. Snakes cannot have, you don't have the simonim. We learned already that things that crawl on the ground don't, even if they would have snapper and kashkesses, they wouldn't be kosher. So here the Gemara calls them nachash. So how could it be from one hand, this seems to be a contradiction, right? How could it be a Livyatan that it's a kosher fish? And not only it's a kosher fish, it's being saved for the tzaddikim, for the world to come. And now you're calling it a snake. Let's put that aside, that question. The Gemara says, Zachar and the Kreva Abraham, these two monsters were created male and female. I'll push it up so you'll be able to see it better. And if not, and if they would mate, they would destroy, because of their size, they would destroy the world. What did the Abisha do? Sides es hazachar. He castrated the male. Did Rashi say that also? Or Rashi said he just killed in the cave? Gemara says he castrated the male, and he killed the female. And he gave it, he salted it, he preserved it for the world to come, for the time to come. If you kill
the female, what is a need to castrate?
Rashi actually, it's interesting. When Rashi quotes this Gemara, the Rashi I quote in the Chumash, Rashi doesn't say he castrated the male. He just says there's no female, they can't mate. Finish.
Right.
Rashi doesn't quote that part because there's a big difference. The Gemara is going to ask the same issue as we have here with these massive fish. There are massive animals that Hashem also had that discussion with. And over there, he took a different approach, and the Gemara is going to ask what the difference is. Also, so anyway, over here we see that the female fish, the female Livyatan, he killed, he salted, if it's a dikim la'aseh lavai, Shanamar, as the pasuk says, v'harag esatanan ashebayam. He did kill one of these big monsters that are in the yam. He did kill them. Hold on, I want to make life easy here. Okay, let me go further. Hold on 1 second. Let me go. Says the Gemara, the same issue that Hashem had with these. I thought we're going to ask all these questions. Get ready. Says the Gemara, the same issue Hashem had with these massive fish. Af behemoths b'harei elef. Also, he created the beasts of the 1,000 hills. 1,000 hills. Why were they called the beasts of the 1,000 hills? Because they were massive, like big mountains. Hashem also had the issue with them. Zachar Keva Brahim, originally he created a male and female. And if not for the fact, if Hashem would let them mate, Machrivim kol ha'olam kuloi. But Raymond, look what the approach Hashem responded here different. I don't know. You're asking a good question. But Ma'asa Kadosh Baruch Hu, what did Hashem do? By the way, this happened the day they were created. They didn't have a time. This is done right away. Ma'asa Kadosh Baruch Hu, what did Hashem do? Sirei Sadach Azachar. Over here, he castrated the male, but he didn't kill the female. It says, V'tzinein hamekeva. And the female he preserved. Ushmara l'tzadikim. Why over here? Why by the fish? He killed them, the female fish, and over here, he just, the female behemoth, the massive behemoth, he just preserved them. So the Gemara goes to ask that question. The Gemara itself asks the question. The Gemara says like this. Hasam Nami. So the Gemara asks there too by the animals. By the fish. Why not just cast? The man is the troublemaker. The male is the troublemaker. Buckle him down. Why kill the female? Listen what the Gemara says. Dogim priti. Fish are unrestrained. Now it's interesting because if you know about the history of the Mabel, it says that fish in general are more, they have problems because they're always being chased because they have very little security over there. The bigger just swallows the smaller, so their life expectancy is less, and they're always full of fear. But at the same time they multiply, and not always fish in history have been doing bad, even when the species, the other animals have done a virus. By the fish, traditionally, we say sometimes they stayed out of trouble. But over here, the Gemara says, okay, there you go, Raymond. You must be, you must know a lot. But Gemara says the reason that restraining the husband, the male fish, just by castrating him and just letting it go, it wouldn't work because dogim are pritzi. Okay. If the man has to be controlled, why not kill the man? Why not kill the male and let the woman alive? Let the female alive? Good question, yeah? And for the Gemara, Eboy is saying, but if you want, I'll give you two answers. One answer is Nekeva Malicha Mali. One answer is the female fish, a salted female fish, tastes much better. The female is better if it's a bit much better when you salt it. The Iba is saying, and if you want, I'll give you another answer. The Gemara gives two answers. What's the second answer? The second answer will actually make you laugh. The Gemara, the pasuk says, and we say it. It's a pasuk in Tehillim. Hashem's. We say it to Hashem. Livyatan. Why did Hashem create these monsters? These massive fish. Why we know that eventually we're going to eat it when Mashiach comes. But until then, what benefit we have from this massive fish? So the pasuk says, Livyatan zeh, these big fish monsters, Yotzarta, Hashem created, L'sachek boy. Hashem wanted to have a game. He wanted to play with somebody. He wanted to have somebody to play with. And we'll soon see. The Gemara says Hashem has a play date with the Livyatan every day. So because Hashem has a play date with the Livyatan every day, he couldn't let the female alive and kill the male because by having the keva lav erech ara. It's not proper for Hashem to have a play date to conduct the sport with the female. So the Gemara asks, and that's the reason why the male fish has to be left alive. So the Gemara asks, so why by the animal? Why by the animal? Why not? Over there, the Gemara also says the animal, the big animal, he castrates the male and kills the female. I'm sorry. Why not just preserve the female in salt instead of cooling it? The Gemara answers, salted fish is good. Salted meat is not good. Okay, so now, Rabbi said, over here we see a lot of things about this Livyatan. Where are we in this topic about the Livyatan? The Livyatan, fish were created on Thursday. And when they were created, even the big fish were created. That created a big issue because if Hashem would let them mate, we wouldn't be around. So Hashem took the female, killed it, took the male. It's interesting, Rashi doesn't quote that part, but the Gemara says they castrated, buckle down. The female is being salted, preserved, and when Mashiach comes, we're going to have fresh sushi, fresh preserved sushi. Now, the Gemara says, the whole issue, why is there a difference? The Gemara in Baba Basra goes on, what's the difference between the big fish and then the big beasts? Okay. Now, let's move on to another Gemara about the Livyatan. Here we move on to another Gemara about the Livyatan. Let me put this one on. Hold on. This is a Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Yaakov Chaim, you with me? Today's a slideshow. This is a Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Here it goes. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah says like this. The Gemara before this talks about, hold on. The Gemara before this talks about that when the world to come happens, Hashem will say, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, Hashem will tell all the nations, whoever, make an announcement. Now it's time to get the reward. Whoever feels they deserve a reward, please come and line up. And the Gemara says, all the Goyim nations line up for the reward. And one by one, Hashem says, what do you, until one by one, he knocks them aside, and only the Jews deserve the reward. I made a bracha already, so don't. Excuse me. And it says, when Hashem puts all the nations aside and says, don't drain my cup, you didn't do anything for the Jews, you didn't do anything for me, you did it for your own pocket, says Hashem laughs. Hashem has a ha-ha. He says, I got you. It says that's the day that Hashem will laugh at all the people that thought they're gonna twirl him. So the Gemara asks, this is a Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Daf Gimel Amud Beis. So the Gemara says, Hashem laughs only then? Eini means it's not so. I have another statement that says Hashem laughs quite often. You know what the Gemara is going to bring now? Hashem has a game, a sport with the Livyatan every day, and he has a good time. Now, if you want to know Hashem's schedule, the Gemara says, I'll tell you what Hashem's schedule is. Rav Yehuda Amarav says, every day has 12 hours. The first 3 hours of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yoshek Vayisa B'Torah. Hashem studies Torah. That's 3. Shniyos, the next 3 hours of the day, Yoshev V'Donas Kol Olam Kulei. That's when he judges the world. Kivun Sheroyesh and Eschayev Olam Kliya. When he sees, oh my goodness, the world doesn't deserve to last because of all the troubles, so he switches hats. Oymed Mikisi Adin. He stands up, goes away from the throne of judgment, and he sits on the throne of mercy. And this is how he saves the world from being destroyed. So that's the first 6 hours of the day. Shlishius, the third 3 hours of the day, Yoshev Ezonis Koloi and Kuloi. That's when the Hashem sustains all creatures of the world. Mikarne Ravim Adbeitse Kinim. From the horns of the big animals that we were talking about, the big as mountains, till the eggs of the lice. Hashem just make sure everybody has their needs. What happens, what happens the last section of the day? Hashem has a sport and has a game with this Livyatan. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Livyatan zeh, Yotzarta l'sachik bo. Hashem, you created this big fish. Again, remember, we have this contradiction. We keep on calling him a fish, yet the Gemara said there's a nachash. And that's going to be a big difference in the halachas. But over here, the Gemara says that this big fish is used as a sport with the Eibishter. But for a minute, the Gemara goes on to explain, what does it mean he's laughing? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, so Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, "In bri yisag besachik, al bri yisav eina besachik ela isa yom bavad." The difference is like this: every day he laughs with his creatures. When it comes to Mashiach's time, or end of time, when the going want to try to knock them a Chinese, they deserve a reward too. That's when he laughs at them. He doesn't laugh with them. So here's where we have the schedule and what Hashem does with this Livyatan. Oh, I erased the Gemara already. I erased the Gemara. I have to bring it back up. I have to bring that Gemara back up a second. But before I do that, here there is a medrash. Let me see. There's a medrash in Vayikra Rabbah. The medrash says like this. The medrash says, here it comes up. The second line, I don't know if I can make a marker. The second line, you see it over here? Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Oh yeah, see my green? Amar Rabbi Yehuda B'Rab Shimon. So Rabbi Yehuda B'Rab Shimon said, Kol behemoths v'Livyatan, all the animals and the great Livyatan, and kinigin shel tzadikin la'asad lavai. That is something great, a reward for the tzaddikim of the world to come. Okay. Comes the Gemara, comes the Medrash and says, we're talking about these massive species, these massive creation. How are you gonna shech them? How are you gonna shech them? Keitzad heim nishchotim. How are they shechted? Remember, we're talking about these massive behemoths, the ones that are biggest mountains, and we're talking about these killer whales that could destroy cities and cities. So the Gemara said, the Medrash says, behemoths noitzes l'Livyatan b'karnov. These big animals would poke with their horns. They would stab their horns into the fish. The Livyatan noitzes l'behemoths b'sam pirov, and the Livyatan will stab the animal with its fin. They're going to have a struggle. It's going to be a big war. The behemoth, the big behemoth versus the big fish. The behemoth is going to use its horn, and the fish is going to use its fins. Poke it, and that will make them die. Gershon, what's the obvious question? In other words, you're not going to have an edel, a sheikh, a simple guy with a beard shechting it because it's way too big. They're going to take care of themselves. And we're going to have a dead Shiur Habar, a dead Livyatan, and then I say we as if I'm the tzaddik. The tzaddikim are going to have what to eat.
That's
Comes the Gemara, and the Gemara says, whoa. What do you mean? There's many laws of shechting. A fish, you don't have to shech. But an animal, you have to shech. Suddenly, there's a massive animal walking around. That animal is getting stabbed by fins of the Livyatan. And Mazel Tov, we're all eating it. That's not a kosher shchita. V'loi kach kaninan. Didn't we learn that there are exceptions? You could use a lot of things for shchita, a lot of sharp, as long as it's very, very sharp. But there are some exceptions to the rule. I bet you that this wouldn't qualify. So listen to this. Amar Rab Abin Bar Kahana. So Rab Abin Bar Kahana said, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says, Torah Chadasha Me'iti Teitzeh. When Mashiach comes, there is going to be a new set of laws. Things that are now prohibited are going to become permissible when Mashiach comes. So, for example, this is one of the items. This type of shchita is not allowed in our times, but when Mashiach comes, that will be allowed. Now,
where are you reading from right
this
now?
I'm reading from Vayikra Rabbah, a Medrash.
Oh, Vayikra Rabbah. It's not Gemara.
Medrash, Vayikra Rabbah, Parsha Yud Gimel. Oh, yeah. I was recording this, but now 30 minutes into the recording, it stops. It says I'm full, so I have to. So it's not going to be uploaded on my YouTube unless I upload it from this. Look, because it's a shiur. It's a shiur that a lot of people don't know this type of thing. Okay, this is the simple shot in this medrash. Do you know that there's a very famous medrash? Rabbeinu Bachaya brings it. How do you say a pig in Hebrew? Chazer. Why is a chazer called chazer? Because Rabbeinu Bachaya says chazer means to return. Pork, pig, is only prohibited now. There will come a time when it will return, and even a chazer will become kosher. It's a very funny. People question it. That's why it's called chazer, because it will return to become kosher. There's many halachic problems with this statement because we keep on saying that the Rambam says one of the fundamentals of faith is to believe that Torah never stops. The Zu Torah Loitia Mechlefes will never change. The same Torah that we did from 3,000 years ago, we're going to be doing it forever and ever. And suddenly rules are changing. So there are other mefarshim to say that the rules won't change, but this will be an exception to the rule. That this type, every rule has an exception. Once in a while, Hashem's. This is not going to be a everlasting rule that you can eat meat without shechita. It's going to be a one-time thing. Some of the Yefei Toyar says that there. However, the Meratz Chias, a Maseches Nida, says we have this complication that from one hand you have to believe that the Torah doesn't change, but the Gemara also says, mitzvahs beteles la'asad lavoi. The mitzvahs, some of the mitzvahs will become batel when Mashiach comes. So it depends. It depends how you learn Pshat. There is a very famous explanation from Rabbi Chanan Wasserman in Kovet Shiur and Chelik Beis Siman Chav Tes. Somebody once asked him, how could, from one hand, you say mitzvahs betelas la'asad lavoi, that some of the mitzvahs will stop when Mashiach comes, and at the same time, one of our principles of faith is HaTorah azu leitiyeh mechlefes, that Torah is never stopping. And he says, you have to understand that this statement that you say, that mitzvahs betelas la'asad lavoi, that is included in the Torah. The Torah already now is telling you it's not something is going to stop. He's telling you now some of these mitzvahs. Part of what you know now is that you should know that there come a time that you don't have to do it anymore. Just like there are certain mitzvahs that are applicable to male, others to female. You can't do them. Certain to Kohanim, some to Levim, right? The same thing. These mitzvahs are only applicable that now. When a certain time kicks in, then they cease. Now, Rabbi say, what is Pshat Bechlal that this meal is going to be a meal of sushi without the rice? It's going to be the fish. We're talking about Well, us is lovely. Who's going to be hungry then? We're going to be hungry for spiritual stuff. We're not going to be into these things. So Rabbeinu Bechaya, on the pasuk where it talks about creating the fish and everything, he actually speaks about in length this concept of what does it mean to eat l'asad lavoi. He says it's going to be a different type of eating. At that time, the eating is going to be to become elevated, and the elevation will be different types of food can elevate you more because they're more spiritual. So he says, depending on these elevated foods, you're going to be able to reach a much higher level. Now, let's go back to our original question. The Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, the Gemara says that the Livyatan is a kosher fish. And the Gemara also says that the sign of a kosher fish is those fish that lay eggs. Right? Caviar, they're kosher. There's different types of their offsprings come from an egg. So that's one of the signs of a kosher fish. So this is one of the reasons everybody is pretty adamant that when you say Livyatan, it's not what we call today Livyatan, the killer whale. Because the killer whale doesn't have, as I said before, doesn't have scales. And besides for that, if you ever read up about them, they are, how they have their children, how they have their offsprings, is not the way the Torah describes the offsprings of a kosher species. Okay, let's move on now to another Gemara, but this is how the Rebbe explains the Gemara. The Gemara is here. It's a Gemara of Baba Basra, but I'm going to explain it based on the teaching of the Rebbe. Hold on. You know, it's getting closer to Gimel Tammuz, so it's a good piece of information to know. After the Rebbe passed away, when we were youngsters, all we had to learn from the Rebbe is things that he said by Farbrengen, and he allowed to be printed as his talk. And some of them he edited, some of them he didn't. After the Rebbe passed away, they found notebooks in his drawer, which were there for many, many, many years. Some of the notes that he wrote there were things that he said, in Russia. He had it in a notepad, notebooks, and those notebooks they printed after the Rebbe passed away. And those notebooks are fascinating. So here, this is when they printed it. This is notebook number 55, Rishimus number 55, and this the Rebbe goes on to explain the Gemara we just learned in Baba Basra. The Gemara says in Baba Basra Ayin Hey. The Gemara says, "Atzil HaKadosh Baruch Hu lasa sukkah latzadikim." Hashem is going to make a hut for the tzaddikim. What is he going to use to make the hut? The oirei shel Livyatan, the skin of this massive fish. He's going to make a beautiful tent. Zacha, whoever merited, he will have this oisen loy sukkah. For him, it will be a tent. Loy zacha, if he did not merit, oisen loy silsil. So he's not going to have a tent that's completely surrounded. He'll just have like an umbrella, something to block the shade. Loy zacha, if he didn't even merit that, oisen loy anok. Anok is they'll make him like a necklace out of this. This is what the Gemara says. Loy zacha, if somebody didn't even merit to do that, oisen loy kameya. They would make him an amulet. Is that the right word? A kameya is an amulet, a small thing to hold. But it's all from the skin of the Livyatan. Vasha'ar. And if any more skin is left over from the Livyatan, Parisei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Al Chaymeis Yerushalayim, Hashem spreads it out on the walls of Yerushalayim. V'zivoi mavik misoifa oilam v'ad soifoi. And the shine of the skin of the Livyatan will give light to the whole world. Okay? Comes the Rebbe, and the Rebbe goes on to explain what does this Gemara mean in service of Hashem. Zacha means to merit. A guy who merits a lot will have it as a hut. A guy who doesn't merit so much will only have it like an umbrella. What does it mean? So it says the Rebbe, Zacha also means zakus, purified, cleansed. Somebody who completely worked on himself and cleansed himself, then for him, the reward will be that the skin of the Livyatan will totally surround him because he's totally fixed. If loy zacha, if however he did not purify himself completely, he only some parts of him are intact. What's some parts? Let's say his way of thinking is good. Oh, your intellect is fine. It didn't translate in action, but at least your brain is fine. So you'll have a cover over your head, because symbolic of your head, because that's what you clarify. That's what you purified. If you didn't even do that, then you're going to get like a necklace out of it. Because the necklace shows that it's around your neck, and the neck is where eating, drinking, and breathing comes. That's symbolizing that you are trying to work on your midas. By us, we say the moyach the brain has to control the midas, has to control the way you behave. If you have the brain and you don't react, then there's a disconnect. Or because the brain controls what you should love, what you should hate. The difference between a behemoth and a human is a behemoth just likes whatever, he does whatever he likes. His emotions, his feelings control him. A human, the brain controls him. So if a person only has the feeling and that he's controlled, but he doesn't have it yet in his brain, then he gets a necklace. If he didn't even do that, then he gets an amulet, a small amulet. Why? What is a small amulet? That's the amunah, the trust. He has the faith in Hashem, and that's why he gets something very small. The Rebbe over here speaks about, the Rebbe in many Maimarim, the Rebbe spoke about this Livyatan. This Livyatan, what does it mean that Hashem? We say it in Baruch Nafshi. We're going to be saying it now, Rosh Chodesh, in a couple of days. In Baruch Nafshi, we say Livyatan Zeh Yatzarta L'Sachar Boy. Hashem created for him to play. What does it literally mean that Hashem is playing a game? And why with the Livyatan? What is this all symbolic to? Anyways, I figured that this will be a perfect way to finish off the Shiur. Now that you know, the first Shiur we learned what's a kosher fish, what's not a kosher fish. In the second Shiur we learned what's kosher eggs and what's not kosher eggs. I figure now we should know what we should be expecting when time Mashiach comes. So we should at least, didn't we just learn mitoy shaloi lishma bal lishma? What does that mean? Sometimes just do it for the sake. You know what? If Yaakov Chaim, if you want Mashiach to come because you want to taste the Livyatan, good enough for me. Good enough for me. I'd rather, Abi, this is it. Anyways, so there's a difference between if you think Livyatan is a fish or Livyatan is a snake. If he's a fish, then we don't have the question that the Torah is not changing because the fish is kosher now, it's kosher then. If it's a snake, then if it's Torah Chodesh and Meiti Tetzah, just like the animal you're going to eat with a different type of shchita, you're going to be able to eat the snake. So all these things run into a discussion, La'asad Lavai, and the Rebbe would always say, the Gemara says Mashiach can come certain days. Eliyahu Hanavi. He doesn't come on Fridays, he doesn't come on Shabbos because he doesn't want to ruin our preparation for Shabbos or ruin our Shabbos. And the Rebbe would always say, let him come. And believe you me, we'll find a way to be happy for him. Just let him come. The same over here. If it's for this, for that, he'll come, and I'm sure we'll enjoy the meal. One last thing, it says when Mashiach comes that Hashem is going to make a circle dance for all the tzaddikim, and that's when they're all going to say, this is God who we hoped for. And the question is, why in a circle? The Baal Shem Tov, if you ever see Hasidim, always dance in a circle. Why in a circle? And the answer is because when you dance any other way, face each other or whatever, then you're a bunch of singles, and each one shows off. When you're dancing in a circle, there's no beginning, there's no end. Everybody is the same, and there's no dancing better than the other one. We're all in this together, and that's something very, very special. And that's why we read Parshas Bamidbar before Shavuos, because in Parshas Bamidbar it teaches us that you have to count. Right, today's Chumash, Moshe Rabbeinu is counting Klal Yisrael. What does counting do? Counting shows that every person is counted. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't take up a bigger number than Yankel. Everybody is as equal to Hashem. Everybody has his portion, as we say in davening. Saying Chelkeinu b'Serasecha. Please give us our part in Torah. Every Yid has his part in Torah. Okay, so as I finish here, let me shut up the recording. I want to give a special. I don't know if I should call it a yashikoyach, or maybe I should punish him.